podcast, where we continue our conversation without interruption. Artificial intelligence, AI, has become an integral part of our daily lives, with its impact extending far beyond the tech industry. News and reports about AI can be found in almost every field: national security, economics, politics, you name it. As a result, AI is quietly shaping our world on a daily basis. While I may not be a technical expert, it's crucial for everyone to stay informed about AI's capabilities and potential consequences. To navigate the vast ocean of information, we need to engage with these topics without getting lost or disconnected from reality. In this episode, we'll delve into the less discussed aspects of AI, exploring its darker side as well as the hopes it holds for the future. Join me on this journey as we examine the complexities of artificial intelligence and its profound impact on our world. Stay tuned, and let's explore the intersection of technology. Always stay safe.
Welcome back, everyone. It's time for another deep dive. And this time, we're going to be looking at the darker side of AI.
Ooh, exciting.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a collection of reports and articles and analyses, and we're going to kind of dig into all that and see what we can find. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like we're, I don't know, like digital detectives or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like piecing together the clues, trying to prevent AI from, going rogue.
Right. And the sources you've gathered give us a lot to work with.
Yeah, so we've got reports on cybersecurity and humanitarian action, AI safety frameworks, analyses of global AI threats. But we're not here to fearmonger. We're just trying to understand, how this tech could be misused. Where are the trends? What are those tripwire moments that we should be watching for?
Right, those crucial kind of cross-the-line things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in.
Okay, sounds good.
One thing that really surprised me when I was doing the research for this was humanitarian hacking. I never realized that organizations like the Red Cross were so vulnerable to cyber attacks.
Yeah, it's something that's becoming a bigger and bigger concern. The ICRC report we've got here really highlights how their commitment to neutrality, actually makes them more vulnerable because it restricts their technology choices sometimes.
Yeah. It's like the people who are dedicated to helping others become the targets themselves.
Right. And they often lack the resources that governments or corporations have to really beef up their cybersecurity.
Makes sense. It's kind of ironic in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The ICRC actually did this really interesting exercise. They called it the Humanitarian Cyber Range.
Okay.
And it showed that even just routine decisions about technology can have these big consequences for aid efforts.
Like what kind of decisions?
Well, think about something like cloud storage.
Yeah.
It might be more efficient to use a commercial provider, but it could raise concerns about neutrality. Or you go with an open source solution, but that might not be as secure.
Right. So it's like a trade-off between efficiency, security, and this principle of neutrality.
Exactly. And it really highlights these ethical dilemmas that humanitarian organizations face in this digital age.
It makes you realize that good intentions don't automatically equal good security.
Right. Good point.
And this kind of brings us to another potential tripwire, the use of AI in developing dangerous weapons. The Carnegie Endowment piece lays out some pretty disturbing scenarios.
Yeah. Disturbing is one word for it.
So, for example, they talk about how AI could enable non-experts to produce chemical or biological weapons.
It's a chilling thought, right? Imagine someone with zero specialized knowledge being able to create a deadly toxin just because they have access to the right AI tools.
Yeah, or what if terrorist groups got their hands on this kind of technology?
It doesn't even bear thinking about.
Exactly. And they talked about these things called limit evils, which are basically tests to see if you can push AI to these dangerous limits.
Yeah. Like, can you get an AI to walk you through creating a bioweapon step by step?
Even if it's just a hypothetical scenario, it's still terrifying.
Well, those tests are vital for understanding the risks,
Wow.
We need to know if there are any inherent boundaries within AI that prevent this kind of misuse.
Or if those boundaries can be bypassed.
Exactly. And the potential consequences are just massive.
Yeah, the report suggested that AI-facilitated weapons could potentially exceed the damage of even natural pandemics.
Which is just mind-blowing when you think about it.
Absolutely. It's a global threat. It's not just about governments or militaries. It could impact all of us.
Which is why international collaboration is so important.
So what should we be looking for specifically when it comes to this, AI and weapons development?
One thing would be AI systems that are capable of actually designing new bioweapons or optimizing existing ones, and making them more lethal or more easily transmissible.
Right, so it's like AI is a bioweapons engineer.
Exactly. And another thing to watch out for is the spread of open source AI tools and data sets. Things that could be easily misused for malicious purposes.
So it's not just about controlling the technology itself, it's also about controlling the knowledge and the information.
Exactly. You've got to be vigilant on both fronts.
Right. And the ICRC report actually brought up another troubling trend, the blurring of lines between civilian and combatant in the digital age.
It's interesting, isn't it, how digital technology is making these distinctions less and less clear.
Yeah. Like, what happens when civilians are using open source intelligence to give information to the military?
Right. Does that make them legitimate targets?
Or what about the laws of war? Do they even apply in those situations?
It's a bit of a legal and ethical gray area.
It's almost like the civilianization of conflict, but in a way that actually makes civilians more vulnerable.
Right. It's a really complex issue with a lot of potential downsides.
Definitely. And speaking of complex issues, let's talk about the global AI race. Every country wants to be a leader in AI, but what happens when national security concerns take over?
Well, the Wilson Center piece we have here really dives into that, particularly from the perspective of the new U.S. administration.
There's a lot of speculation about whether they'll take a more aggressive approach to AI in terms of national security.
Yeah, some experts are even predicting the creation of a new cyber force.
Like a dedicated military branch focused solely on cyber operations.
Exactly. And that raises all sorts of questions about escalation and international stability.
Right. And how do you balance those national security interests with the need to foster innovation in the tech world?
It's a tough balancing act. An overly restrictive approach could stifle innovation and economic growth. But a lax approach could leave us vulnerable to adversaries who are rapidly developing their own AI capabilities.
It's a real dilemma. And it gets even more complicated when you consider how AI is challenging the very idea of an open society.
The LSE article we have really explores this paradox, how transparency, which is supposed to be a cornerstone of open societies, is actually being weaponized.
Through things like disinformation surveillance,
Yeah,
AI-driven manipulation.
exactly. We've already seen this happen.
Yeah.
Think about the Cambridge Analytica scandal.
Right, where personal data was used to target and manipulate voters during elections.
And AI is just making this type of manipulation even more sophisticated.
So how do we protect ourselves?
Mm.
How do we protect our data and our privacy in this increasingly digital world?
Well, becoming more aware of how our data is being collected and used is a good first step. And we need to demand greater transparency and accountability from the companies and governments that hold our data.
It feels like we're caught in this digital web of our own making.
Yeah, it can feel that way sometimes.
But it can't all be doom and gloom, right?
Yeah.
Are there any bright spots?
Well, there are a lot of really smart people working hard to develop what they call ethical AI and to come up with safeguards to prevent misuse.
So let's talk about that countering the AI dark arts. Are there any practical ways to predict and prevent this kind of harmful use?
Well, one thing that's being discussed is the need for more robust AI safety frameworks, guidelines and best practices for responsible AI development.
So kind of like a code of ethics for AI.
Right, exactly. And those frameworks would emphasize things like transparency, accountability, and human oversight.
Makes sense. But how do you enforce those frameworks on a global scale?
That's where international collaboration comes in. Like maybe something similar to the Wassenaar arrangement.
Which is that agreement that controls the export of weapons and sensitive technologies.
Exactly. And maybe we need something similar for AI, to restrict the flow of potentially dangerous systems to the wrong hands.
So like an international treaty for AI.
It would be ambitious, but it might be what's needed.
Yeah, it would definitely be complex, but the stakes are pretty high.
No doubt about that.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here, from humanitarian hacking to weaponization to the blurring lines of warfare to the global AI race and the threats to open societies.
It's been a whirlwind tour of the dark side of AI.
But we've also talked about some potential solutions, some ways to counter the AI dark arts.
And it all comes back to those tripwire moments, those early warning signs that things are heading in a dangerous direction.
So for everyone listening, what stood out to you as the most concerning trend? What's the most crucial tripwire that we should all be watching for?
What really got your attention?
This is a conversation that demands our attention. We need to be informed. We need to ask questions. And we need to demand responsible development of these incredibly powerful technologies.
Because the future of AI is not predetermined. It's up to us to shape it.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll be back to explore how AI is being used to counter some of these very threats we've been talking about.
Stay tuned. We've been talking about all these unsettling ways AI could be misused. And it's kind of scary to think about, right?
Yeah, it's like it feels like things are changing so fast,
Yeah.
and it's hard to keep up with all the potential risks.
Absolutely. And one area that I'm particularly concerned about is the spread of disinformation, especially on social media.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, we've got this commentary from the strategists. They're actually advocating for real-time data sharing between social media platforms and law enforcement.
Wow, real-time data sharing. That sounds a little, I don't know, intrusive.
Yeah, it definitely raises some privacy concerns, but their argument is all about speed. They point to the Christchurch mosque shootings as an example. You know how quickly online radicalization can lead to real-world violence?
Right, and by the time the extremist content is flagged and removed, the damage is already done.
Exactly. So they're saying that if authorities had access to this real-time data, they could potentially intervene earlier.
So it's like a pre-crime kind of thing.
Well, not exactly. They're not talking about monitoring everyone's online activity, but more about identifying specific behaviors that indicate a credible threat of violence.
Okay. But even so, it seems like a slippery slope.
Yeah, it would definitely require some very clear guidelines and safeguards to prevent overreach.
And what about the social media companies themselves? Do they have a responsibility to prevent this kind of stuff?
Well, the article argues that they do.
Yeah.
They control the algorithms that determine what content gets seen and amplified.
So they're not just neutral platforms.
Right. They have a lot of power to shape the online landscape. And with that power comes responsibility.
It's a tough one for sure. But it's definitely a conversation we need to have.
Absolutely. And speaking of conversations we need to have, let's shift gears for a bit and talk about how AI can be used to counter some of these threats.
Okay, yeah, that's a more positive note.
Right. It's not all doom and gloom. There's some really promising developments in the field of cybersecurity.
I can see how AI would be useful there.
We've got this article from Defense One. They talk about how AI is being used to strengthen defenses, especially for government agencies.
Which are prime targets for cyber attacks.
Right. And they often struggle to find enough skilled cybersecurity professionals.
And even with skilled professionals, human error is still a big factor.
Exactly. The article cites a Gartner estimate that by 2025, over half of all significant cybersecurity incidents will be due to human error.
Wow, that's a sobering statistic.
Yeah. But the good news is that AI can act as a force multiplier. It can enhance the capabilities of human analysts.
So it's not about replacing humans. It's about giving them better tools.
Right. AI can analyze huge amounts of data much faster than a human can. It can identify patterns and anomalies that might indicate an attack.
And it can automate a lot of the routine tasks, which frees up the human analysts to focus on the more complex threats.
Exactly. It's a win-win situation.
So where is AI being used most effectively in cybersecurity?
Well, threat intelligence and network detection are two big areas,
Yeah.
where speed and accuracy are crucial.
Right,
Yeah.
because you need to be able to identify and respond to threats in real time.
Exactly. And AI can actually help agencies shift from a reactive to a proactive approach to cybersecurity.
So instead of just cleaning up the mess after an attack, they can actually prevent it from happening in the first place.
That's the goal. It's like having a digital early warning system constantly monitoring for potential threats.
That sounds amazing, but it also sounds like something out of a science fiction movie.
Well, it's becoming more and more of a reality. But it's important to remember that AI is not a silver bullet. You still need a strong foundation of what they call bedrock defenses, things like firewalls and intrusion detection systems.
So AI is like an extra layer of protection on top of the existing security measures.
Right. It's about enhancing those measures, making them more effective.
So if we can use AI to defend ourselves, what's to stop our adversaries from doing the same thing?
That's a good question. And that's why those safeguards and international collaboration efforts that we talked about earlier are so important. We need to restrict access to these dangerous technologies. We need to promote responsible AI development globally, and we need to be prepared to defend against AI-powered attacks.
It's like we're entering a new era of cyber warfare.
Yeah, it's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah.
And the stakes are higher than ever.
Speaking of which, that Wilson Center piece had some interesting insights into the potential cyber policy priorities of the new U.S. administration.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation about how they're going to approach things. Some experts are predicting a more aggressive stance, a renewed emphasis on offensive cyber operations.
They even mentioned the possibility of a new cyber force, a dedicated military branch focused on cyber warfare.
Right, which would be a pretty significant shift in U.S. cyber strategy.
What kind of impact could that have?
Well, it's hard to say for sure, but it would definitely raise concerns about escalation and unintended consequences.
And how would it affect our relationships with our allies?
Yeah, that's a big question.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole issue of offensive versus defensive capabilities.
It's a delicate balancing act.
Absolutely. Too much emphasis on offense could lead to an escalation of cyber conflict. But a weak defense could leave us vulnerable to attacks.
So it's all about finding the right balance.
Exactly. And it's not just a U.S. issue. This is a global challenge. Countries all over the world are grappling with these same questions.
So what's the solution?
Well, a lot of experts are calling for international norms and agreements on responsible AI development, something similar to the Wassenaar arrangement. But for AI.
So even though AI might not involve bombs and bullets in the traditional sense, we need to start thinking about it as a potential weapon of war.
Right. It has the potential to disrupt global power dynamics and change the nature of conflict.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, but it's important to have these conversations to understand the risks and the potential consequences.
So what's the next step? Where do we go from here?
Well, in the final part of our deep dive, we're going to explore some of the more positive applications of AI. We'll talk about how it's being used to address global challenges and improve people's lives.
Okay. That's a good note to end on, because it's easy to get bogged down in all the potential downsides.
Right. But AI is a tool.
Huh.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
It all depends on how we choose to use it. So we've talked a lot about the potential downsides of AI, but it's important to remember that it can also be a powerful force for good, right?
Absolutely. We tend to focus on the threats, but AI is already being used to solve real-world problems in all sorts of fields.
Like healthcare and education and even energy.
Exactly. And we've got this great commentary from CSIS that highlights the role of AI in electric transmission and grid management.
Which might not sound as exciting as self-driving cars, but it's incredibly important.
It is crucial, especially with the growing demand for electricity.
Which is being driven in part by AI itself and all these other emerging technologies.
It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? AI is driving the need for more electricity, which in turn requires smarter grid management, which AI can help with.
So how does AI actually help manage the electric grid?
In lots of ways. It can analyze data from sensors and smart meters to predict demand and identify potential outages.
So it's like a digital brain controlling the flow of electricity, making sure it gets where it needs to go.
Exactly. And making sure the grid is operating as efficiently and reliably as possible.
The article also mentioned lifespan and flexibility as key advantages of using AI for grid management. What do they mean by that?
Well, high-voltage transmission systems can last for 80 years or more. So AI can help ensure those systems are operated and maintained effectively.
To maximize their lifespan and reduce the need for costly replacements.
Exactly. And flexibility refers to the grid's ability to adapt to changing conditions.
Like the constantly evolving mix of energy sources.
Right. AI can manage that complexity. Integrate renewables like solar and wind with traditional sources like coal and natural gas.
So it's all about ensuring a stable and reliable electricity supply.
Even during peak periods or when there are disruptions.
This is all very impressive from a technical standpoint, but how does it actually benefit people's lives?
Well, think about it. A reliable electric grid is essential for modern society.
It powers everything.
Exactly. Our homes, our businesses, transportation systems, everything. And AI can help reduce costs, improve reliability, and facilitate the transition to cleaner energy sources.
So it's a win-win for everyone.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's a great example of how AI can be used to solve real-world problems that affect all of us.
Absolutely. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored the dark side of AI, those tripwire moments where things could go wrong. But we've also seen how AI can be used to address global challenges and make our lives better.
And I think that's the key takeaway. AI is a tool. It's not inherently good or bad.
It's all about how we choose to use it.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations, to be aware of both the potential benefits and the risks.
So what's your advice to our listeners? How can they help ensure that AI is used for good?
Stay informed. Educate yourself about the issues, engage in conversations about the ethical implications, and demand transparency and accountability from the people who are developing and deploying these systems.
Because ultimately the future of AI is up to us.
It's not predetermined. We have the power to shape it.
Well said. This deep dive has given you the knowledge to think critically about AI's impact on the world.
Now it's up to you to use that knowledge to advocate for a future where AI benefits all of humanity.
Thank you for joining us, and keep asking questions. The future is in our hands.